just wanted to share this really cool story about a ballet dancer. All right, I got a phone call a couple of years ago from this woman who said, please come to my house. I want to leave some money for the Salvation Army in my will. So I made the appointment for the next day and I went to see her. And this person was different. First of all, she was like 90 years old, which I'm used to, and she was 90 plus years old. But she, as she invited me in and preceded me to her living room, she moved different. And I recognized it right away because I have a niece who's a ballet dancer who dances with the San Francisco Ballet. And she sat down, I sat down, very elegantly way she moved and everything, and I said to her, you're a ballet dancer, aren't you? And she smiled. And she said, how did you know that? Do you follow ballet? And I said, no, I have to admit that I don't. But I have a niece. And she asked a lot of questions about the niece, and it sort of got us sort of friendly with each other, and she said, okay, we'll talk about the will afterwards. First, I have to tell my story. And I said, do tell. And she said, back in the Great Depression, I was in my early 20s, and I was a ballet dancer, and I was out of work. And my young husband, who was also a ballet dancer, and our dreams were shattered. She said, I always knew about the time I reached 30, I'd have to retire, but I wanted to have a studio of my own, maybe eventually someday enough money to buy a camp for kids to come and learn ballet. My husband wanted to be a choreographer. There we were in our early 20s. It was the middle of the winter. It hadn't snowed, but the temperature was about 10 below zero. And we were homeless on the streets of Manhattan on the Lower East Side. And it was the coldest night of the year. She said it was the coldest night of my life. We had no money. We had nothing. And we were scared and we were in trouble. She said our biggest concern wasn't that we're going to starve to death or anything, and we were dressed maybe warm enough. She said it was our feet. When a ballet dancer has any damage to their feet, like you could get from frostbite, it's over. She said we treat our feet very badly, but we try and keep good care of them as much as we can. And she said we were thinking that our careers might be gone tonight. Even if we made it through the night, frostbite might get us. She told me, she said, I kind of figured I was okay. And my husband thought that I was okay because I had 3 pair of woolen socks on, but he didn't. And it got to be about 3 a.m. and the first signs of frostbite was starting to hit him, and she said that's when I panicked and started knocking on doors. Up one side of the street, down the other, and nobody would answer their door. Nobody answered their door. She said I was screaming, just let us in. Don't feed us, don't give us anything, we don't even need blankets, just get us in where it's a little bit warm, where our feet are freezing. Nobody would answer. And she said it was getting on to about 4 a.m. and finally one door opened up a little bit and there was a woman behind it, and she took one look at us and said, come on in, I've got to take care of you. And she brought them in, and she knew how to take care of frostbite. And back in those days, what you did is you filled tubs with sort of tepid but not hot water, and you put the feet in it. And she said that she took us into her kitchen, sat us down with tubs, put our feet in, and then she left. She left her house with us alone in it, where we could have robbed her. And she called to us as she went out the door. She says, I'm going for help. She came back about a half an hour later with a female Salvation Army officer who knew what to do. And between the two of them, they took care of our donor's feet and her husband's feet, got them through the night, and got them to the Salvation Army shelter the next day. And they stayed at that shelter for about a week, and their feet were fine. And about the end of the week, he had a job interview, and he got the job, so they were okay. I said, that's an incredible story. She said, I haven't told you the incredible part yet. I said, well, what? She said, all right, now I'm going to fill in a few details. The woman who came was, of course, a Salvation Army officer, but the one who opened the door was not a Salvation Army officer or a Salvationist. But she said that she had been helped that month by the Salvation Army, and she felt that she heard that we were knocking at doors and nobody was opening, and she said, someone help me, I've got to help this couple. I have to take the risk because someone helped me. And I said, that's pretty incredible. That's wonderful. And I said, so what happened with your career? And she smiled. She said, you don't know who I am, do you? And I said, no. She said, do you follow ballet? You have a niece who's a ballerina. And I said, no. She said, how often have you been to the New York Ballet? I said, once. She said, you don't know what you're missing. She said, let me first tell you about my husband. And she mentioned his name. She expected that I would react. I didn't. She said, you don't know his name? He's only one of the most important choreographers of the 20th century. He died last week, and I'm redoing my will. And I'm making a pretty good inclusion for the Salvation Army in it. And I said, well, who are you? And she mentioned her name, and she said, you don't know me either, do you? And I said, no. And so that was kind of it. I spent some time with her, telling her what to say to her attorney, and they did redo the will. And she's still alive. She's now close to 100 years old. But I had an occasion to run into my niece not too long ago at her wedding. And after the wedding I said, have you ever heard of so-and-so? And I mentioned the man's name. And she just gave me one of those looks. I've been getting them from her for years. She said, you don't know that name? She said, he's only done, she said, you have to have seen his work. He did choreography for major movies in the 40s and 50s. You don't know that person? I said, no. And she said, okay, who's the ballerina? And I told her, and she said, well, let's see. She danced for the New York Ballet. She was prima ballerina there, one of the world's most famous ballerinas. And she danced in Russia, and she's very, very well known within my discipline. And I said, okay, well, I guess I'm just kind of ignorant of all that. And Denise said, but really isn't the best part of the story the fact that what she did when she was young? And I said, yeah, in a way, the person that I visited was not a 90-year-old woman, but all the time I was with her, I felt like I was with a 20-year-old who was still living the gift that she was able to give, that she was inspired to give this volunteer because of what had been done for her by the Salvation Army. My niece went off to dance with her new husband, and I just got thinking, wow, it really does show that what the Salvation Army does has such a ripple effect. And over the last year, when I think of all the people we've helped with Hurricane Sandy, that we're helping as I speak with the people in Blair, Texas, the ripple effects are going to be there throughout all the various communities as people that we've helped turn around and want to help each other. And maybe that is kind of describes the Salvation Army the way Commissioner Watson described to me a couple of years ago, when he says the Salvation Army is really a very large group of people in and out of uniform, including volunteers and all the people that we affect. So that's my ballerina story.